What's going on, guys? It's Matt Marinoff, Real Estate Recovery Group. My co-host for today is Don DeRosa. Don and I actually know each other for, I want to say, about 2 years, around 2 years or so. And I've been following Don on social media. I met Don through a mutual friend. And it's amazing how, people become friends, associates. Maybe sometimes they do projects together. And Don, to me, is someone who is offering services to people and basically letting, I guess, people understand what their options are in the real estate world. And it's important, obviously, because, you know, especially in today's market, what's happening is that people are in sheer panic. The COVID-19 has people upside down. The fact that the lending practices are a little bit upside down. Being able to pull equity out of properties, a little upside down. HELOCs right now, from what I understand, are non-existent. So there's a lot of things that are in play right now that are not being helpful. And people are scared, they're terrified. People that just got their new real estate licenses, newly real estate people that are coming into the real estate world that are questioning, hey, what's going on? Like, 30 days ago, real estate was kicking, and now we have all these different issues with trying to, qualifying people, getting them out to take a look at properties. And we're going to ask Don about Georgia. We're going to ask him about the market that he's in. Jersey, we're cranking them out. So as far as real estate concerned, there are bidding wars. Contractors, investors, empty houses, properties that are newly renovated. There's not enough of them out there. And if it was a situation where before the COVID-19, they had their permits, they were working on it. So people were actually purchased properties. They're at a standstill. And they're waiting, or properties were purchased from the sheriff's sales or closed short sales or what have it is, stuff like that. So, Don has been in real estate for, quite some time. Some people might even call him Father Time because he's been doing it for so long. So he's a real estate investor. He's an author. He's a teacher. He's a coach. He's a national speaker. He's one of the past presidents of the Georgia Real Estate Investors Association. One of the longest running REIAs in the country. Okay. So Don's trained thousands of people, obviously, and help people become experienced real estate investors, helping them building wealth through technologies and techniques that he offers. And basically, he talks about different ways of creative financing, creative real estate. Technology is important. Here's a gentleman who obviously was around in an era where there was the horse and buggy age, and no, I'm kidding. But he understands. Technology. Remember, I was telling you, we talked about yesterday with Jennifer Romero how some people were in different scenarios, different times of their life in real estate, and they're not adapting to real estate, and they're not adapting to technology. Lastly, Don was honored as one of the single most top 21 real estate investors in the United States and Canada, and he was featured in the New York Times best-selling book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. So without further ado, I got to tell you, that's the longest goddamn introduction I've ever done for anybody in my live stream, Don. But I wanted to make it known so people understood. Don, tell people who Don DeRosa was or is.
Well, I mean, the short version of that is I can't give anybody a rags to riches story. I grew up, in a small town in Western Pennsylvania. I was what you would call your middle income. Didn't grow up with a silver spoon, but didn't grow up, like a lot of these guys tell you they grew up in, on the streets and homeless. No, I was your middle of the road kid growing up. We weren't rich, we weren't poor, we were just in the middle, right? Went to college, got what I would call an average education. I was your typical person, went to college, and got, I don't want to say, like my oldest son tends to say, "Hey dad, C's get degrees." Well, yeah, I don't look at life like that anymore, but back then I probably did look at life like that. I was like, okay, I just want to get through.
C's, did you say C's get degrees?
Yeah. It's kind of a mediocre attitude.
No, the
But a
reason
lot of
why I
people,
asked is because mine was that D was for diploma. But go ahead.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people take that approach. I mean, nowadays I look at it much differently. Now I look at how education is so important, and it's funny when you're young, you don't really think of that stuff. You just want to get out and do your thing. But now I value education a whole lot more than I did back then. So anyways, I left, got into the corporate world, spent a bunch of years there. I was bounced around. I moved 7 times in 10 years with Airborne Express. I was a district manager for them. And so I was an efficiency expert, as they say. My official title was district field service manager, but I was an efficiency expert where they would bring me in to help train all the supervisors that they were bringing into the company across the country. So my job was to move into a failing station and then put efficiencies in there, make it profitable again. And then they would literally move me to the next crap hole. Got tired of that, got into the real estate world. And as they say, the rest is history. I've been doing this now. I've been doing real estate now for the past 23 years, going on 24 now. I've bought and sold just about every type of real estate you can think of. My favorite is buying subject to or buying creatively, such as owner finance, subject to wraparound mortgages, all that stuff, all the stuff that I think we're going to head into.
Mm-hmm.
I've been teaching it for years. So that's me in a nutshell. By a few years ago, I was fortunate enough, they contacted me, Gary Keller's office, and said, "Hey, Gary's writing a book. We heard great things about you. Would you be interested in participating in the book?" I was like, "Sure." And
Gary Keller, some people might not know who Gary Keller is.
Keller Williams Realty. He's the founder and CEO, president, owner of Keller Williams Realty. He has several books out. He has a red one called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, a blue one called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And then there's a couple others, I think. I forget what the names of them are, but they're all #1 bestsellers on the market. And I was fortunate enough to be highlighted as one of the top 21 in the United States and Canada. So I have a 2-page bio in the back of that book. I have a lot more hair, though, I got to tell you, in the back of that book. I looked a lot younger.
So what happened? You wrote that article in the book, and then you just said you went bald after that? Is what happened?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's all that stress with 3 kids.
Did you meet Gary Keller?
I've never met Gary. I've never met Gary. I've talked to him. I've talked to his crew. Funny story was they interviewed me for this book, and I gave them all my best stuff for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then right before the book came out, I got this manila envelope in the mail, and it was the manuscript of the book. It was just kind of a typewritten Microsoft Word version of this. And most of it was a thank you. It had pages upon pages upon pages of people saying thank you, and then it would have person's name. Well, I scoured that book because I spent a better part of a year on that. And I scoured that book for my name, ego, and didn't see my name anywhere in the book. And I got to tell you, I was pissed.
Mm-hmm.
I was really upset. And I was like, I threw it away. I was like, I can't believe I didn't even make the cut. But maybe a month later, I get this big case in the mail. And inside the case were all these books, all these blue millionaire real estate investor books.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost tossed it out, almost just took it to the trash and tossed it out. So then I started going through it, started looking at curiosity, got the best of me. And then I saw some quotes that I did in the margins. And then I went to the back and looked at the top 21. And sure enough, I was back there. So I was like, oh, wow. So that's my claim to fame, I guess.
So what does it mean to be in the top 21? What does that mean?
I have no idea. I don't know how they determine that. That's his determination, not mine. I'm very good at what I do, but I don't know that I classify in the top 21. That's a pretty high honor. I don't know that that's correct, but maybe top 20, maybe top 21 in his eyes of the people he interviewed. I don't know.
Right. Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite proud of it. I mean, I don't want to undercut it, but I mean, it's a pretty good accomplishment on my part. So I'm very proud of it.
Well, I mean, listen, Gary Keller's Gary obviously is one half of Keller Williams, so that has to say something for it as far as the fact that they wanted you in the book and the information that you provided. And what is the name of that book again?
It's called The Million. I don't even think I have one. That's
It's
pretty sad. I don't even have one on my
the
bookshelf.
It's the
It's
millionaire.
Millionaire Real Estate Investor. It's blue. It says I have one. It's downstairs, but that's a blue book, Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Did you get a signed copy?
I did.
Nice.
I did. That was kind of like the top book in there. It was a signed copy. That's why I said I have it
How many books
downstairs.
did he give you?
It was I think it was 40 or something in a case, a big box, big.
Very
I
nice.
mean, it was a big box, and they were stacked maybe 10 high, 4 wide.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember exactly, but all I remember is I was ticked and almost threw them away. So, but that's my funny story.
No, it's a good story. Don, so there's a lot of people out there right now that are scared of technology. There's a lot of people out there that are frightened, obviously, with change. There's a lot of real estate agents that are out there that are the mindset where they were getting their leads from a book, from a binder, that really were not tech savvy. And then they switched over to the MLSs that they made for each state and then the counties, and they broke it down. And I don't even know how many MLSs there are. But the fact that, technology was helping people grow. I recently had spoken with somebody, and they have 3 offices, and the father was very against technology, very against taking, like, why, if something's not broke, why fix it? But you have to keep up with the times.
I was just going to say that's a very antiquated way of thinking about it.
Right.
Because technology, here's the one thing I know. Technology does not stand still. And I don't know, most people that know me know that I run my entire business. I was one of probably the first adopters of the iPad many, many years ago. 2000, I don't know when it first came out, 2007, 2010. I don't remember when the iPad came out. Right. But for years, remember, I was an efficiency expert, and I kind of was old school. I did a lot. I mean, I was your daytimer kind of guy. That I used my daytimer, and everything was paper driven. Mm-hmm. But I had an efficiency element about me. So I knew the importance of technology and how to use it. And I knew that if I didn't use it, it was literally going to roll over on me. And you're seeing that a lot with what we call the millennials now. There's so much technology out there. I mean, look at the system you're using right now just to broadcast this. I mean, that's technology at its latest.
Well, you and I actually had a conversation about that technology like 2 weeks ago. We were on the phone for a couple of hours, but it was like almost an hour about technology and how scared I was of it. And here I am owning it, and I'm crushing it.
Yeah,
with technology.
Yeah, and that's my point. Is technology can be a scary thing, but in most cases, you can't break it. It's not like something where you can snap it and. I mean, yeah, you can screw it up and you may have to start over to fix it, but you can't really break it. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, I mean, you're a perfect example of this, I would say. I showed you my system. Like I can come into my system right now and put certain things on the screen. I'll put my name up there, or I'll put my phone number. it's going across the bottom, but I can go and I can put my phone number right there and turn it on, turn it off, put my YouTube channel up there, turn it on, turn it off. I can do all kinds of things. I can do stuff in the top corner. That's all technology. And that's the new way of selling houses. I mean, think about, we're in a pandemic right now. We're at a stay at home or whatever, a shelter in place order. Real estate agents can't get out there and show houses old school way.
Right.
So they're forced to use technology. So you're either going to embrace technology and get with the times,
right,
or you're going to die. You're going to lose revenue and you're going to limit yourself. And I don't know that anybody really wants to limit themselves in technology or in income. So, it's one of these things where sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain learning a new system. I mean, I'll use you again as an example. You got a great little system here with your interviews, very professional, but it takes a little bit of time to get to know it. But looking at it now, is it pretty easy once you get to know it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's the way technology is. So, years ago, I chose to put my entire business literally in the palm of my hand. So I run my entire business in my iPad. So every aspect, like I've spent more time in my office these last 2 months than I have in the last 10 years.
Seriously.
Swear to God.
No, I agree.
And I've transitioned, and I'm not I was completely paperless. I have a printer now. But there for the longest time, I didn't even have a printer at my house. People go, well, how do you print stuff? I'm like, I don't. I put it on my iPad. I take notes on my iPad. I do contracts on my iPad. I look up stuff on my iPad. So my entire business is in the palm of my hands from a technology standpoint.
So technology obviously is going to make or break people, investors, real estate agents, really anybody over the course of the next couple of months. A lot of people are switching to online sales. I'm obviously worried about, in October, if I'm going to be able to actually do my boot camp in Jersey. Things might lean towards no. We're working on building the online class, everything online, to be able to support it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because I'm getting invited onto these different Zoom calls, groups, masterminds, and they're all saying, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable flying. If you do it online, love to attend." Or
I think business as we knew it is going to change forever.
Right.
In my opinion.
Right. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I mean, everything that I see right now points towards, more education. I think people are finally starting to realize, one of my biggest gripes with real estate agents that I have is, can I get CT credits from it? Can I get credits? Like if I hear one more agent say to me, can I get credits? I want to vomit. What about education? What about just getting education? It's like, unless there's a reason for them to do it, they're not going to do it.
How about I put an extra $20,000 in your bank account? Would that give them incentive?
Well, and you know what? And you would think it would, right? But I mean, look, I did two properties, 3 transactions with one real estate agent. She made over $55,000. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. Another agent made a little over 14,000. Another agent made 6 and change. So if you think about the cost of the training aspect of it, and the fact that you'll actually be able to have something that's tangible, that you can utilize and better yourself as a human being, but also as a professional, be a leader in your industry, in your market share. My God.
Well, technology, like I said, technology can be your friend or it can be your worst enemy. If you don't choose technology, I mean, I'm going to go back to, let me say this. There's a huge difference between agents and investors.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me even break that down even further. An investor, there's even differences in investors. Now, I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I don't consider myself as an investor. It's not how I consider myself. I consider myself a problem solver. Okay. We all have problems. I mean, so when I look at someone's home, an investor can simply throw money at it and it's either a go or a no go. Whereas I don't look at it that way. I look at it and go, okay, this person has a problem. How do I solve that problem? And a lot of my solutions come in the form of strategies that are what I would call no money down or creative financing. Whereas that differs. So in a bad economy, let me state this. In a bad economy, I probably make more money in a bad, down, chaotic economy than I do a good, super strong economy because I'm not one to overpay for properties.
Right.
Right. That's just not me. I don't like to overpay for stuff. And if I don't have to spend, full price for something, I won't. I can't tell you the last time, unless somebody gave me the deed and took it over subject to, I haven't bought a rental property that I paid cash for in 10 years. Now, I've bought rental properties before, recently, but they're all either owner financed or they're subject to, which is an owner finance.
Okay, so that's a good segue. Tom, let's talk about creative real estate because I feel like people don't understand what the actual term means with creative real estate. And I think people feel, how do I say this? It's almost like investors get a bad rap when they try to do subject to transactions. And I think that people don't understand the need for it, the purpose for it, and actually how it's actually helping people that are in bad situations. Like now, I spoke with a gentleman yesterday with a real estate agent. The real estate agent did not do their job in vetting him and finding out a very simple question. You want to know what the very simple question? One of the most simplest questions that you have to ask when
How much do you owe?
What's that?
How much do you owe?
Well, one of no, that he did ask, thank God. Are your properties currently listed? Because here's a real estate agent that doesn't know of a property that's listed, and I think the way that the person listed the property was as a pocket listing.
Ah.
So in a situation like that, maybe the agent wouldn't have known about it, or he didn't do his due diligence to look the property up to see if the property was listed. Regardless, the creative side of it was the homeowner said, I am open to, subject to selling my properties.
Okay.
Which I have to tell you, you don't hear coming out of the words of a homeowner.
Well, most homeowners don't even know what that term is.
So maybe let's talk about subject to. Let's talk about subject to financing, so people have a little understanding of, subject to deals, and are they really real?
Okay. If you're okay with this, I think I can. Let me. If I can put this up, maybe it might be beneficial.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get this up here for a second. Because most people don't even know what subject to is, or most people don't understand how this works. I had these slides skipped, so it won't show it. So give me 1 second.
Okay.
So let's talk about, if I switch over to here, This, I call us problem solvers, and you may or may not, you might want to switch me to full screen so people can see this. But if you think about, pardon?
I said, Roger that. Go ahead.
So you think about this. This is how, is this a good deal? So let's take a look at this. You have a fair market value, a house that's worth 200,000. Now in your neck of the woods, maybe you add a zero to the end of that. I don't know. But in Georgia, this would be a typical, what I would call 1,800 square foot home. So you got a fair market value of 200,000. You've got a first of 145. Repairs of 5,000. So to get into this deal, to buy this deal, you got to come up with 150,000. Now, this is how most people think. Most people think, even agents think this way, is I've got to find a buyer that's willing to come up with 150 grand. They have to be able to qualify for that. They have to be able to do all that. Or if I'm an investor, I have to come up with $150,000. Or I have to have really good credit to qualify for a loan for that. And the truth of the matter is, so, you got a $50,000 profit and an ROI of 33%. That is your typical deal. And I always ask people, raise your hand if you think this is a good deal. Well, everybody raises their hand thinking it's a good deal, because who wouldn't want to make 50 grand? And who wouldn't want to make 33%? But then the next question I give people is, do you have $150,000 to make this happen? And that's when most of the hands come down. Well, in a subject to transaction, you don't have to come up with the money to take over the first, meaning to pay off the first. You have zero. So all you're going to do is basically take over that loan subject to the existing financing. They're going to actually deed you the property. And all you're going to come up with is 5 grand for the repairs. So your return jumps, because all I'm bringing to the table is 5 grand. My return jumps to 1,000% as opposed to 33%. And all I have to get now to bring to this deal to make it happen is 5 grand as opposed to 150 grand. So if I'm an investor, that's a no-brainer for me. Right? So let me explain typical ownership, and I'll do this quickly so we can get back to, but I thought visual aids are the best. In a typical ownership, when I buy a property, if I went down and I handed you, Matt, I handed you $200,000 cash, you're going to give me a warranty deed. That's going to give me ownership. And if I did that, that's all I would need to own that property and to walk away from that closing table, right? They'll give me a HUD statement, but generally no note, no deed, no security instrument, nothing. But if I don't have 200,000, I got to go down to the bank and I got to borrow that money. They're going to give me the terms. And let's say I've got to borrow, I'm going to put some money down on this property and I'm going to borrow 145,000 at 5%, 30 years, $650 a month, principal and interest. Well, when they do that, okay, they're going to make me sign a promissory note that spells out those terms. And they're also going to make me sign a security instrument or a deed, which puts a lien on the property, right? So the first document, the warranty deed, that's ownership. These next two documents are a lien that gets put on the property. Now, depending on whether you live in a judicial state or a non-judicial state, depends on if there's a third document in there or not. But generally speaking, let's just stick with these two. That's your typical ownership. When the homeowner stops making payments and they drive around and they see one of my We Buy House signs and they stop and they say, okay, here's all there is to a subject to transaction. Basically, what they do is the homeowner transfers the deed. They sign over a deed into my name. Okay. And that's it. And that's pretty much the process of a subject to. Now, there's a bunch of other paperwork that goes with that, and you got to make sure you know what you're doing. But in a nutshell, that's pretty much it. So that's what I've been doing for the last 20 some years. It is by far the most powerful technique in real estate today. But the problem that most agents don't, they don't understand it, and B, a lot of investors don't look at the agent and go, I'll pay your commissions, because that's an expense. Agents that in my opinion, that's the real crux of the issue, is agents don't understand work directly with someone like myself because they're worried about how they're getting paid. They're worried about their commission. They're worried about how they're going to get and they're worried about how they don't understand how to explain it. But in a down market like we're going into, and we can get into that in a minute, because I personally think, you mentioned it earlier, real estate swimming is still going strong in New Jersey, and it's still going strong in Georgia. Don't get me wrong. Not as strong as it did, but we're still closing stuff. It's not like 2008 yet. Yeah. But you understand one thing. Right now, every single person out there is just holding their breath.
Right.
Because we haven't gotten back to any kind of normalcy.
Correct.
When that happens, banks are going to start wanting their money back. They're going to start, okay, right now they're all on board going, okay, we'll do a deferment. We'll do a forbearance. We'll do a modification, because they don't want this property back. But at some point, the government, Big Brother's not going to be there to put that blockade in between the bank and the consumer. And I'm already seeing it now. And unless they change state laws, they can't do it anyways.
Right.
Because it's a federally, what they're talking about on the news about, we're going to do a moratorium on evictions. We're going to do a moratorium on foreclosures, et cetera, et cetera. Legally, they can't do that except for federal programs like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, any kind of Section 8, anything that the government is in charge of, they can do that. But when you get to like Georgia, we still had 500. Normally we have about 1,600 to 2,000 foreclosures every month, depending on the month. This month, we still had 600 on the foreclosure report that comes out. So it didn't stop that. And those are mostly private individuals exercising their right to foreclose because they don't really care. They need the money. They need the property. So that state law dictates that. Now, if it was a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or something like that, they wouldn't be able to do that. The federal government blocked it.
Don, that's actually a very good point. And that's something that people should be aware of. The fact that the foreclosure laws, who can foreclose, who can't foreclose. When you mentioned the number, you said 1,600, then you mentioned another number about 600. Are you saying that every single month there's new properties coming out that are
in Georgia, we only foreclose once a month. We're what's called a non-judicial state. Okay. Every state's judicial, meaning every state can file any lender can file a lawsuit called a lis pendens and foreclose on the property. But there are a handful of states that are what we call non-judicial states. Georgia happens to be one of those. I don't think New Jersey is, because your foreclosure is really long.
Right. Our state, right? Yes.
Right. So your state is what's called a judicial state, meaning when I don't make my payments, the bank goes to the court system, files a lawsuit called a lis pendens, and then it goes through the court system, which we all know the court system drags everything out and takes forever, especially if there's a lot of foreclosures. Well, in the state of Georgia, at the closing table, you heard me mention before in those documents that I shared with you, there's a third document that you would sign at the closing table, and that's called a waiver of borrower's rights. Now, you can't sign that waiver of borrower's rights in the state of New Jersey because you're not a non-judicial state as well. Right. But in Georgia, we are. So when you go to buy a house in Georgia, all lenders make you sign what's called a waiver of borrower's rights. And that just waives your right to a judicial foreclosure. So in Georgia, it's a very, very quick foreclosure. And all they have to do is send you a private notification, then a public notification, and advertise it to the general public. And then they read your security deed at the courthouse steps, literally standing on the courthouse steps. And if nobody bids or somebody bids, whatever it is, you lose that house. You're out. Then the sheriff comes a month later or whatever the process is and puts your stuff on the curb. And you're out.
So there's no right of redemption.
Pardon?
Right. There's no right of redemption.
Not in Georgia. Not for foreclosures. For tax sales, different.
So people need to understand the redemption process. And I I think that people don't understand. Like in the state of New Jersey last year, 2019, November 1st, they actually changed the law in Jersey where it used to be you would get two adjournments, and it'd be two adjournments that would equal up to 30 days. So it'd roughly be 14 days each. Now they change it in Jersey, so now if you get two 30-day, so you get 60 days. The bank also gets two. The court system in New Jersey, they don't want to hear it anymore. They want these properties gone. So when people are like, "Oh, pandemic, beautiful. It's going to be so much. It's going to be 2008." It's not going to be like 2008. It's going to be a fancier, more sleeker race car, and that car will drive right to a fucking wall, and it won't even scratch the paint. So people need to open up their eyes, and honestly, in some cases, they need to shut their mouth, and they need to listen to people like you, Don, people like myself, people like other people that are leaders in the industry that are listening, that have their ear to the ground, that have contacts inside the bank. But instead, they yap around. I'm going to give you an example. Forbearance, deferment. It's two different things. And I'm tired of people saying, I got a deferment. This is paperwork that I actually received from a homeowner who's talking to me and telling me, no, I have a deferment. You have a deferment? Yep. I said, show me the paperwork. And in fact, they emailed it to me. A balloon payment is not a deferment,
Nope.
Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner. And incidentally, at the end of the 3 months, you got to pay that dollar amount. Now, if you can't afford to pay that dollar amount, you got a problem. Now, they've made it so now they're willing to work with you.
Well, I think the operative word is not so much willing. They almost have to, because what happens, and you know this, but I'll tell your audience if they don't already know this. When a bank, when a loan goes 90 days in default, they get penalized, right? They get penalized by, I forget the name of but ultimately it's the FDIC, right? So when they get there's another organization that's kind of in between there, but I don't remember what the name of it is. But anyways, when a loan goes 90 days in default, if you have it affects the bank's ratios and the ability to lend money, right? When you have a lot of them, the FDIC finally comes in and goes, and that's what happened in 2008, that all these banks were in default all past 90 days.
Right.
And all of a sudden they looked at all this defaulted paper and went, you're not viable anymore. The FDIC came in and said, nope, we're seizing your assets. And they shut them down. Well, banks are smarter, I think, now. And back then, they didn't see that stuff coming. Right. And again, to talk a little bit about history, the 2008 crash was self-inflicted.
Correct.
That was the banks writing really crappy loans, and that the only way out of those was to rewrite those loans, right? Or take them back. Here, we're not in that situation right now. We're in a situation where we have great loans that are out there. We have loans at 3%, 4%, 3.5%. So from that perspective, we're not going to go down the exact same path we did in 2008. So banks, but in another way, banks are looking at this going, okay, we can't put ourselves into a 90-day default, because if we have a lot of these 90-day defaults, then the FDIC is going to come in and, especially the smaller banks are going to seize their assets. And but you're not seeing any of that right now.
Don,
and I suspect.
So Don, really quick, so let me cut you off. So one of the issues that I have is homeowners are burying their head in the sand. They're not even contacting or talking to their banks. Now the banks are calling them and saying, hey, call us back. You're not calling them back. People, smarten the fuck up. Call your bank back. Because right now, because of COVID-19, the pandemic, right, this is considered basically a disaster. And because of that, if you don't communicate with your bank and say, look, I can't pay my mortgage because of COVID-19, the pandemic, or the disaster, the current state that we're in, you don't actually say that, they are going to keep reporting to your credit bureau. You have
you cannot just bury your head in the sand.
You have to
You've got to let them know. Because I had a guy call me the other day. He goes, I looked at my bank statement or my credit statement, and he goes, I got dinged for a 30-day late. He goes, I thought that they weren't reporting this. I said, only if you contact your lender and tell them you're in trouble.
Right.
And even so, what most people aren't realizing right now is every state has their own laws and regulations on how to handle evictions and foreclosures.
Right.
The only thing that the government can dictate right now, unless they change state laws, unless they go to each governor and you go to the court system and they change the laws, the processes are going to stay the same. Okay, that's just how it is. I mean, because again, every state is different. The only thing that the government really has control over is the programs that they have control over. Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, any Section 8, anything that has to do with a government insured, a government backed loan,
right,
they can dictate that. Anything outside, anything private outside of that is fair game. And that's what people need to understand. You know, people were like, okay, well, I called my lender and they gave me 3 months. They gave me a 3-month deferral or forbearance or whatever you want, whatever they worked out. What they don't realize is if the governor of that state doesn't come back, if it's a private lender, if the government or private company, the governor doesn't come and change the laws for foreclosure or eviction, it's just a matter of, I mean, you're digging yourself a grave by not communicating and not making payments if it's possible.
The issue the issues that I have right now with people that are calling us is everybody wants something for nothing. People, they're like, well, I can't pay your company. And obviously we're giving out as much free advice as we can to people. But if you're asking us to make the phone calls, if you're asking us to get involved in it, if you're asking us to communicate with your lender because you're too scared to do it, yeah, I'm sorry, I have to charge for that. I don't care. I'm not in business not to make money. And then, you always get the people, well, you're not supposed to charge. You know what? Go call a not-for-profit organization. Call, Hope for Homeownership and see what type of help that they're going to offer you. I have agreements that were drafted up by attorneys to help people, to be able to offer services. So, if you're one of those people that, and I hate to say it, but if you're like and this is real talk, if you're a get-over and you're trying to get over on your mortgage company because Jack down the street can't afford to pay his mortgage, and you've got money in your bank and you can pay your mortgage, let me tell you the reality of what's going to happen. You will get your ass handed to you.
That's absolutely true.
You're going to get your ass handed because you could pay your mortgage. But when you get slammed and your mortgage is $3,000 a month and you think you're getting cute and you haven't paid your mortgage, let's say in 4 months, now that's $12,000 that you have to pay. And now they come back and they say to you, okay, well, you don't have that money. That's okay. We're going to work with you. We'll make up a payment plan.
Yep.
That payment plan might not be a modification. You might not qualify for a modification. You may only qualify for a repayment plan. And in most cases, those repayment plans, they want that money back in 6 months.
Yep. 6 months, year tops.
They're going to ask the people, well, you have a job, you have pay stubs, you have money coming in. It looks like you just didn't pay your mortgage. Can you give us a profit and loss?
Yep. They're going to ask for financials. They're going to ask for financials. To qualify for any program, they're going to ask for financials. And if your financials don't meet their qualifications, and I remember back in 2008, they used to have entire civic arenas, like civic centers, where these lenders would come in, and it was like droves of people would go in and sit down with people from the banks.
Yep.
Remember that? And they would sit down and they would go through your financials. They would tell you what to bring. And I can't tell you, you'd have hundreds of thousands of people going through there, or tens of thousands, I guess is probably a better word.
Yeah.
And a very small amount actually got help.
It was almost the way they set it up was almost like speed dating.
Yes.
You had an appointment, you went to a designated area. They assigned a state, or some of the people were driving from all over the United States.
Yeah.
Being paid, put up in hotels. These were outsourced individuals to try to help to figure out what your debt to income ratio was. And quite honestly, really all they were doing, and I saw right through it, it's a program. It's literally a plug and play program. You could totally do it yourself. So this time, for stuff like that, probably not. There's a lot of things that they learned from that actual crash of the market. You're never going to see the 1% tickler loans again. And if you do, get ready to buy properties, because I can tell you right now, in 3 years from that day going forward, from the conception of the loan, it's going to be a shit show. So I tell people, call your lenders. Legit, cut the shit, because you're going to put yourself in a worse situation. Don, let's talk about the people that have already gotten modifications. People that have already had modifications.
Yeah, people don't realize that they've already been down that road, and they've already gotten assistance. Okay, right. They went from 6% down to 2%, or 2 point whatever percent.
Right.
And
maybe they maxed them out. Maybe they put them into a 40-year mortgage. Like if you're FHA,
so now what?
If you're an FHA loan and you've already done a modification, guys, they're not pushing you out past 30 years. So if you did a modification 40 years ago, maybe they'll try to reset the loan and pull it back to another 30-year. They're not gonna. It's not like across the board. It's not Manila. It's not like, look, there's a reason why there's Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King, Arby's, Checker, In-N-Out, Go Burger. There's not that I've been to all this, but the reason why I say that is because everybody has a different taste. Everybody has a different feeling. Not everybody likes the fries at McDonald's. Not everybody likes the fries at Wendy's. Not everybody likes the things that are out there for different people and different sources. So it's bad. People need to understand. And the options that are out there for people like myself, people like you that are professionals, we're going to put people in the right direction. They're either going to want to get on board or they're not.
Yep. Well, I think, again, I think the reason why real estate is still pretty strong is because people are still holding their breath, and but you got to understand, we have I haven't seen the numbers because they don't come out till Thursday, but we have over 30, last time I looked, was almost 33 million Americans unemployed. You can't have that many Americans unemployed and not have some kind of fallout from the mortgage industry. It's just because and we haven't even, as a country or as a media, we haven't even talked about what kind of repercussions. We've just been kind of holding our breath, but we haven't really talked about what is going to be the fallout. Everybody knows there's going to be a fallout. I know. I mean, like I said, I make money in a down economy, so I'm gearing up to make a lot of money at this. I mean, to be truthful, because when there's chaos and confusion, that's when folks that understand the process, know how to buy creatively, that's when you can make lots of money. Okay, so if you're an investor listening, this is the time. I mean, I tell people all the time, a lot of times people get confused of when to jump in, when to jump out. A lot of times, like, 10 years ago, prices were super high and people were jumping in. Well, in my opinion, they were buying rental properties. They wanted to be landlords, and they were buying at the top of the market. That is the absolute worst thing you could do, unless you understood how to buy creatively. And then it didn't matter, right? Because you could buy based on cash flow, not price. But people were jumping in. And I think that was the worst time to jump in. I think people should be jumping in now. And people were going to start to jump out because they don't understand how to make money in a market, right? Well, I've been through, this will be my third cycle. And a cycle happens about every 10 years. It happened in the late 90s. We went through a cycle, happened in the late 2000s, 2008. And then we've been fortunate enough. So about every 10 years, we've been fortunate enough to go almost 20 years without a shift in a cycle. We've been riding that wave of a seller's market, if you will. Well, over the last 6 to 8 months, we've slowly, I don't want to say declined, but we've stabilized and we've kind of flattened out. Over the last 6 months, we were prior to the pandemic, we were watching properties not lose value, but they weren't going up, appreciating at the same level, right? They were flattening. People were properties were sitting, instead of sitting a week, they would sit 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And then instead of prices continuing to drop in a multi-bid situation, people were actually going, okay, it's sat on the market for 2 weeks. Let's drop it by $5,000. So we were seeing small incremental drops at least in Georgia, because that's what I'm focused on. Right. We were seeing small incremental drops in price to get rid of it quickly. Then we weren't in a full-blown seller's market, and everybody that's in this business for any length of time understands that that's the direction we were going. We were going into an election year, and that's just a natural fade for all that. Right. And then the pandemic hit, and it's like that all hell broke loose at that point. We went from a gradual to and we're still not seeing that because, again, we're not back to normal yet. Everybody's still going, banks will take care of us. The government will take care of us. They're still holding their breath. They're not having a need to make any bills, or they're not having to react to anything just yet. Only a select few people are. Okay. But I got to tell you, in 6 months, when this thing is, because we can't keep going in shelter in place. We can't do that as a nation. We've already got 33 million people out of work. I keep going, and we're going to be in a depression like we've never seen.
Correct.
But what people aren't talking about is the retail commercial space and how this is going to affect long-term the commercial
massive
businesses, right? Massive. The restaurants of the world. Now everyone's going to continue to go out and eat, but I can tell you, life as we've known it, in my opinion, we're going to alter that. Correct. We're going to change that. We're not going to the grocery store now, at least in the next year or so, without masks on.
Correct.
You're not just going to go to a movie theater and want to sit next to somebody that's sneezing all over you, right? Correct. We're going to alter those things. And that all brings down the value of a retail space.
Yeah.
And which in turn is going to create continual job loss, or not a growth,
right?
Which is going to affect the housing market because it always does.
I think there's going to be a shift in wealth. I think there's going to be a shift in the way people run their businesses. I run my business virtually. I have for years. So I was not affected by it. My team members are, they've got laptops, computers, cell phones, printers. They've got everything underneath the company. So, there's a lot of people that are saying, hey, I'm working from home. I'm actually productive. Employers are seeing that, wait a second, paying $25,000 for utilities, water, and all that other nonsense a month for a space that I don't need to have. Maybe I could maybe the people that have got 8,000 square feet of office space, maybe they only need 2,000 square feet. almost running like a satellite office.
I'm going to give you just my perspective. Okay. Remember, I mentioned earlier that I hadn't sat in this office. I created a bedroom. I mean, one of my bedrooms. All my kids are gone except for my youngest. So it's just my wife and I and my youngest right now in a 4-bedroom house. So we've got extra bedrooms. So I created one of my bedrooms as my office. And I can tell you, I haven't sat in this office for the last 10 years. Right? I mean, I have an office, I've had it, but let me show you. In the last 2 months, I've taken my entire business and changed. This is my office now.
Nice.
I've gone out over the last so many weeks and just revamped. And you talk about technology. I've changed how I do business. Now, I'm not just going to go when this thing's all over and go, oh, I'm going back out. And no, I'm going to continue down that path. We're going to do more and more stuff online. We're going to do more and more stuff where I'm sitting my butt behind this desk,
right?
Because I've found that I can do business differently.
Right.
And I think what you're going to find is you're going to find people that think that way. And that's what's going to affect. And nobody's really talking about the commercial side of this, the retail side of this, and how it's going to affect. I mean, yes, people are still going to need groceries. People are still going to need clothes. They're still going to need certain items. Like people are still going to go to restaurants. They're still going to go to like Home Depot and those places.
Mm-hmm.
But what about all the other places? What about all the strip malls that you see pop up all over the place that have these mom and pop stores in them? That are they going to be able to survive?
I don't think they're going to be able to survive. And it's so sad because some of the mom and pop organizations, unless the government gets involved and offers like serious grants to help these people, otherwise they're not going to survive. Sad.
But that's a short-term fix, in my opinion, because if people, even government can give me all the money in the world, but if nobody comes to my establishment and buys my product because they're afraid,
right?
Okay, there's only so I tell people there's 3 reasons businesses fail. I don't care what business it is. One is management, okay, or education, lack of education or lack of good management.
Mm-hmm.
The second reason is marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And the third reason is money, right? So you can have the first two. I mean, take any business, take your business, take my business, take any mom and pop, take any Fortune 500. If you're going to be going through those phases every step of the way, right? So in real estate, I say your first phase is management, right? You've got to learn how to manage your business. That's where you put systems in place. That's where you get education, maybe put some technology in there. That's going to help you get through that phase, that first phase. Second phase is marketing. You got to get yourself, you got to market your business and get your customers to come to you. Whereas if you have a retail business and someone's not coming to you not because they don't want your product, I think it's going to change because people are now going to be forced to use technology to go online. Because look at the businesses that are thriving right now. Amazon, Instacart for Publix,
mm-hmm.
or all these delivery services. They're thriving right now because people don't want to go. And I think that will continue. So I think people that don't like change and don't like to conform to technology and where it's going, I think those people are in for a very bumpy road. But I think if you can reimagine and rethink how you do business in today's economy and going forward, I think then you have a really good shot of coming out of this in a very positive light. But you've got to start thinking that technology can help you. I mean, look at the product you're using right now to stream this.
Right.
6 months ago, this thing was in obscurity. right? Did you know this product 6 months ago?
No,
Neither did I. But now lots of people are using it, and lots of people are using Zoom and all these other online stuff because of necessity.
right.
And I think what you will find is people will continue to use these products because now instead of me meeting with my students, my coaching students, one-on-one and spending 3 hours out of my day traveling to and from, I can now do a Zoom. Now I'm perfect, and they're conditioned and perfectly comfortable with a Zoom call or, stream. What is it called? StreamYard, Yardstream, whatever this
This is
product
actually called StreamYard. Yeah.
StreamYard. So, you can do something like this and save yourself 2 hours a day in
Right.
just travel time. And where I think agents are going to struggle is if they think like they did a year ago, they're going to struggle. The agents that I've seen that are successful are the ones that are getting technology. They're doing virtual tours. They're getting out there and they're doing marketing differently. Because let's face it, people are still buying houses. I mean, like my son works for GM. He's still working. They basically had everybody across the board take a 20% pay cut. Okay. But they didn't have, in fact, they turned a profit this quarter because of that, because they transitioned, they thought outside the box. And I commend them because they're not making cars now, but they're making medical things, like they're making all kinds of supplies. So they transitioned how they thought. They used what was there and they revamped what it is.
Right.
And they had a very good philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And I commend them, and that's what I think as investors, as agents, you've got to really, really start thinking, how can I bring a service or a product to someone that's going to have a need? But you got to first understand what that problem is, and then how can you solve that?
Right. Listen, Don, everything you talk about was great. I'm gonna put out a poll probably at some point today, and I'm gonna ask people if they'd like to know more about what you offer, and maybe get some more information about your training, because you're not my normal guest that comes on. A lot of
Okay, is that a good thing?
no, that's a good thing. You have
Okay.
a tremendous amount of knowledge, and I think that people would definitely benefit from a part two of this. And I like to switch it maybe to one of the night shows, because the night shows we dig deeper. During the day, it's more educational. Let people know what's going on in the market share. I think that this might be something of benefit for them if they want to get some more information, and go a little bit deeper as far as the education side of it, and really get to know you, because what you offer as a whole, what you stand for, and not only the information and the practices that you put out in your local market. That information can be used anywhere across the United States. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that people should really start to think outside the box, get outside their comfort zones, and be able to, retool, maybe even rebrand themselves a little bit in the market they're in. You can leave your business practice intact, but there's nothing wrong with putting on an additional arm of some type of business to help them grow. So, Don, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you having the time to come on.
My pleasure.
And obviously, we're friends first before business. And I think that anytime when you have a business relationship, you should have some type of personal relationship to be able to bond easier, to gel. And I think what you're doing and what you offer, I think, is amazing. And anybody that's not following you, that's on my live, should definitely look into, obviously following you, Don DeRosa. And then obviously they can reach out. They can hashtag the Ask Don DeRosa. They could call you at the 678-410-7352 number. They can email you at donderosa ppg5@gmail.com, or they can go to the website that you provided here, which is ppgcoaching.com. And they can go to your YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is youtube.com/forward, and it's Don DeRosa 2. And in that way, they'll be able to get in a little bit more insight of who you are and follow you more. Guys, the 12 o'clock show is about education. It's about bringing you people from other areas, different realms. I mean, look, Don lives in Georgia. I live in New Jersey. I don't have to bring Don on. I don't need to do this. I do this because it's relevant and that people need to understand. They need to educate themselves. So, Don, I appreciate you coming on. At the end of every show, Don, I ask people to do the finger point because I want to see what caliber. I love it. I'm going to give you an 8.5.
I'll practice.
8.5.
I'll practice.
That's what a 10 looks like.
Yeah.
See how my finger, dude, it's like a whip.
Yeah. There you go.
I could cut glass with that finger right there. Don, thanks so much for coming on. Everybody, Don DeRosa, you can follow him. You can Google him on social media. You can see what he's all about. Until next time, thanks so much for tuning in. Don, hold on one second. Don't go anywhere.